So we've travelled round and kindly got invited down by Ollie and the family to come down and to look round and see what they're up to. And as we've travelled around the UK, and can I ask, does anyone know about the 2030 agenda? Does anyone know what's going on that side? A few of you. So for those who don't know, the 2030 agenda was set out by the World Economic Forum, who have set about a destruction job of all small family-owned farms. And it is a physical agenda which they've put in place. And as a result of that, we're seeing farmers going out of business left, right and centre. At this point, we lost 7,000 small farms in the last 12 months. Now, people can say, and I get this from a lot of the farmers, they go, no, I don't see that, you know, it's just bad in our industry at the minute. No, this is desecration of the farming industry deliberately to pull to bits the food supply chain. And unfortunately, we're seeing it unfold on a vast scale now. So for me, coming from a farming background, and I grew up on a dairy farm, granddad had 500 milking cows. And for me, as a 5-year-old, all I wanted to do was to play on the farm. That was it. So, but the challenge we've got is those opportunities for kids are sliding away. For things what we did as kids are no longer there. Now, what kids now don't want to do this, you know, in reality. So I decided after 40 years in the fruit and veg trade and running my own farm and living on the family farm that I would convince Gloria, my partner, that it'd be a good idea to go on tour and to tell the rest of the country what's going on with the food side and to enlighten people about how this is going to play out. And she looked at me and like I was mad, but said, lovely, good idea, darling, let's do it. So we set about doing the tour back in February. We've been on tour. We've done 9,000 miles so far in the little blue camper. We've racked up speaking to over 20,000 people. We've done over 100 talks. We've interviewed farmers. We've been involved in all sorts of garden parties for farmers, all sorts of weird and wonderful things. But where's it got us? And that's the big question. Now, for me, I had a vision in my head that when I got to the end of this tour, I wanted the general public to have a greater understanding of food as a whole, what shite supermarkets sell, and what farm shops sell. Been a massive difference. And, you know, if I ask the question, is there anyone here who uses a supermarket? Now you look, no one's gonna shoot you if you just say yes, right? But it's just a question because we all do. We have to because of certain things. Well, that's changing. I will say there is a company in Scotland called the Good Food Project who we work closely with, which we're going to now be launching for the UK side of things for England, Wales, and Ireland. We're going to be running their online store, which has over 3,000 items, all organic, chemical-free stuff because it's the chemicals what's the issue in the food. And no matter whether people want to accept or don't want to accept what I say, that's on them. I've done my own due diligence. I've done my own research. I've seen how the food industry has changed beyond all belief in the last 40 years, beyond all belief, from the farming side to the fruit and veg wholesale side. Just to give you an idea, pre-pandemic, I've got a friend who's a Tesco's manager and he's very high up in Tesco's now, to the point he has about 70 stores under his belt now. And just to give you an idea, that pre-pandemic, the stores held 67% more food than they do now within the system. So within the store, within the warehouse, within the distribution system, 67% more. So they're hiding the fact to the public that the food's running out. Gloria went into Sainsbury's the other day to try and buy some nuts. We couldn't get any anywhere else, so I was going to Sainsbury's and get some. And she came out and the first thing she said to me, the store's full, but there's no food in there because they don't sell any food anymore. So as we've travelled around the country and, you know, we come from East Anglia and where we are in East Anglia, it's very barren. And I mean very barren. There's no hills, there's no trees, there's no hedges. Average size of a field is 100 to 200 acres. And As a result of that, we grow wheat, barley, sugar beet, oats, maize and rapeseed. Not one of them is food. And it all goes to processing plants that supply supermarkets so they can sell more shite. So as we've travelled around the country and we're talking to farmers, and I say to farmers, let me ask you a question. How often do you have anyone, because they say, well, we don't see any public, we don't have anybody come and buy anything. How often do you get someone rock up at the farm gate and say, can you sell me a ton of sugar beet, please? Because it ain't going to happen. How many people want a bale that size? Nobody wants it. So the farmers have got to take ownership on the fact that they need to now start producing food again. Fruit and veg, meat. There is a massive campaign undergoing at present with the farming side to get rid of meat and dairy. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but you'll see the minute I tell you, check the newspapers out in the next few days and you'll see this all over the place if you buy into that media. The challenge is that they want to reduce by 2050, by 2030 they want 50% of all the meat gone and all the dairy. By 2050 they want it all gone. Lock, stock and two smoking barrels, no meat, no dairy whatsoever. Well, I don't know about you, but I enjoy raw milk. For me, I have meat for breakfast, for dinner and for tea. I appreciate vegans want to be vegans, but I don't want to be a vegan and I ain't going to buy into it. It's unfortunately, again, another thing that's been encouraged and paid for by the likes of Bill Gates. And he is evil, I have to say. Some of the things that are going on, obviously Glorious from Nigeria, and some of the things that are going on out there at the moment are horrific across Africa because he's gone in with GMO food and GMO seed, and what happens? They set it at the end of the year. If it does come up, then you can't grow nothing from it because the seed doesn't do anything. So please, sir, can I have some more? And that's where they want to get us to. So I made a decision I'm not going to take part in any way, shape or form to the 2030 agenda. I don't know if have you all been in the shop at some point? If you haven't, before you leave, make sure you go in. And you'll notice there's no cameras apart from the one to see if anyone steals anything, but there's no digital ID checking because that's going to be the big thing, which is going to be a kicker in the next few months. For those who don't know, there's a petition going around at the minute, and I am not a lover of petitions. But one thing it's going to be really good for, and over 2 million people have signed it so far, it is going to wake the public up to what's going on. Because if you go to a supermarket and cannot buy food without a digital ID, which is where they're trying to get us to, they say, well, you can't even, here's your digital money. And when you go to the supermarket, make sure you got your digital ID and then you can pay with your digital money. Now, for those who don't know how this is going to work, it gets a bit scary and a bit out there, to be honest, because when I first looked at it, if they give you digital currency, so just so we clarify, that can be spent anywhere, and I mean anywhere in the country. If I give it to Gloria, she can spend it in the shop, Ollie can take it into town and pay for fuel with it, it ends up in someone else's hands, blah, blah, blah. The digital currency, what they want to do is have it so it's limited to 15 miles from your house to stop you travelling. So when you go into the supermarket, if you go to pay for something, let's say I fancy a nice steak for dinner tonight, but I'm over my carbon credits, I won't be allowed to have the steak. If I go too far from my home, the money won't work because I can't pay for food because I'm too far from my house. So I've got to walk closer to my house. That's what digital ID brings. You need to fight this. If you've never fought against anything else in this country, for Christ's sake, fight against digital ID because it's dangerous. Now, I hate supermarkets. I'm the first one to admit it. I don't overly like the government, to be honest, but that's another thing. But as we've travelled around the country, the big thing what I've seen is the amount of farmers that are to the point of giving up because they don't know what to do. Don't know what to do for the best. Now, for me, the best thing farmers can do is to start diversifying and to really start looking at what diversification means for them, because lots of farmers we go to, it's a classic example, we go to A friend of ours has got a farm up in Grimsby where we're going to be living. He's got 5,000 acres. And he grows wheat, barley, sugar beet, oats, maize, rapeseed. Starting to understand he's got to change. Now, on the farm, they have lots and lots of grass lays, what they produce. And they're cutting the grass lays and turning it into compost, adding straw to it, which comes off the top of the stacks, because all the straw they produce doesn't go to something useful like bedding animals down. It goes to a burner where it's incinerated to make electricity. But all the wet bales, what can't go, he turns that into compost. And he's got willow on the farm, what he turns into compost. Now, per acre, if you grow wheat, just to give you an example, you might lose £100 an acre. If you grow compost, it's 7 times more profitable. So he can earn £600 an acre out of growing compost to sell to people instead of producing food. That's fucking nonsense. Absolute nonsense. So how do we address it? And this has got to come down to the fact that farmers have to make that change. These guys are already on it. Selling raw milk, to me, is like the pièce de résistance of everything which we need. It's good for our body. It's good for our gut. You know, it's good for the soil, because unfortunately, one of the things which we've seen as we go around the country is the desecration of the soil. And one thing which I remember my grandfather saying to me, and I'm going back, sadly, 50 odd years, was he made a point of saying to me, oh, he said, farmers these days don't know what they're doing. And I said, what do you mean? He said, farmers need to understand the first priority they have of a thing to produce is good quality soil. Once you've got good soil, everything else will come as a result of that. If you've got good soil, you've got good grass, you've got good dairy herd. But if you don't look after the soil, you don't have the good grass. So you have to use their nitram to get the grass to grow. So farmers have got to start taking that ownership. Sorry, Ollie. Not just you. So if we can get the farmers to take the ownership and start looking at things differently on the farm. I don't know if anyone's into Clarkson, but one of the great things I think he covered on the last, I think it was last series before, was about farming the unfarmable. And how could he get to the end of the year and earn slightly less than Caleb, whatever his name is, had earned on thousands upon thousands of acres of farmland? Well, if you look at growing wheat, barley, sugar beet, oats, maize, rape, and you get to the end of the year and you've lost £100 an acre, how can that be? Cost of production on wheat is £165 a tonne. Sale price this year is really good. If you get milling price, it's £168 a tonne. If you don't make milling price and you only get animal feed for it, it's £128 a tonne. Lose £40 a tonne. 4 tonne an acre, lose £160 an acre. What a business model, guys. So how do we change things? Well, for me, as we've been travelling about, and I've come to understand that there's 2 things need to change. One, the public and the public's perception of where they shop. And 2, the farmers have got to change things. If the farmers start to produce what the public want, they then need to find somewhere to sell it, whether it's selling it on their farm, through a farm shop, through a box scheme, through a company that can take that food and sell it to the public, whatever. But they've got to get away from the supermarket supply chain. No one wins. Supermarkets are all about driving the price down and down and down and down and down. I don't know, Ollie, how much is your milk's what, $2.50 a litre? Yeah, the raw, yeah? And in a supermarket, if you go in and buy that white water, how much is it? £1 something. So under, yeah, 40% of the cost. But what are you getting? White water that's shite and got no goodness for it for your body. See, one of the things which I've realised as we've travelled around, I'm blessed by 2 things. One, Gloria comes from a country where they do not produce any shite food. Everything's cooked from raw. So I'm blessed because everything she dishes me up, I'm really lucky that we go to farm shops and shop. We never go into a supermarket, you know, unless we want nuts. So I know on that side, I'm really lucky. And I've been lucky throughout my life on that side because I've been in the food industry. I've always been in charge of the food which I grow, produce, all of that side. But a lot of people have forgotten what food is. Unless it comes in a packet and it's fish fingers to keep the kids happy, or chicken nuggets, what aren't actually chicken at all. They're just slimy, gruey gunk what's been washed off the bones. We have to take ownership as the public and as the farmers to do something different. If the customer genuinely wants something nice and they're prepared to pay for it, and the farmer produces that, why do we need a supermarket? Why? Classic example of something I witnessed the other day. And people will say to me, I can't afford to shop in farm shops. I can't afford to eat organic food. Oh, right, okay, how does that work out in your head? And here's a classic example of one of my mates who I've grown up with since we were in nappies together. Saw him in a village shop, and I said, how you doing, Dan? He said, yeah, really well. And he was stood at the counter with, in his hand, a vape, buying 20 cigarettes, 2 cans of Red Bull, chocolate bar and a pack of crisps. And I said, you're all sorted for the day then, Dan? He went, all sorted, mate. And he's a scaffolder. So he's up and down ladders all day, right? And I thought, just disbelief, you know, and he couldn't see it. 2 days later, his wife posted on social media, they can't afford to feed the kids. How about you tell your husband to stop spending £30 a morning on shite in store? So we end up with this point where the public have lost, in my opinion, complete reality of what food is, and have no idea where to even go and get good quality food. They rely on going, I'm going to go to Tesco's and I'm just going to follow around all the other plebs with a trolley and, you know, beep, beep. We were in supermarket the other day, she went to Sainsbury's and she came out and said to me, she was in there 40 minutes, she came out and said, no one spoke to me. No one. We go in a farm shop and everyone was, oh, how you doing? What is going on? You know, where have you come from? You know, we travel all over the country and we're talking to farmers about what we're doing and they're intrigued. You know, people want to get involved. The public want to get involved. How did we end up allowing ourselves to get in this position where there is no sense of anything anymore? And you know, there's no sense of an emergency from the public's point of view until they turn up at the supermarket and there's no food. Just to give you an idea of this, right? During the pandemic, pre-pandemic, I could make a phone call into Holland and within 36 hours get a lorry of fruit and veg delivered to my wholesale department, and we would be able to sell it within 36 hours. Now, it would take you 11 days to get it across the border. So it's sitting in storage all that time, chilling and so forth. But that ain't the problem. The problem after Brexit, because they didn't deliver what we asked for, we ended up with a real bad situation. So I used to be able to bring an Arctic load of fruit and veg in. If it was an Arctic load of tomatoes, let's say, just one type of tomatoes, import tax, £80. If I want to put beef tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, and normal tomatoes on there, and red tomatoes and yellow tomatoes, that would have been £80. Now that's £80 each type of thing we put on the pallets. So now to import one pallet of tomatoes, and you've got 10 different types on it, it's £800 import tax just to get one pallet in the country. So you can see why your food's going up. It ain't because the farmer's getting paid anymore, that's a certainty. Whether that's in this country or overseas. Now, the other side of the 2030 agenda, it clearly states, and if anyone hasn't and doesn't want to believe me, that's fine, but go read it because it's out there to see. It states that by 2030, we will have no imports into our country. Right? No imports. Just to give you an idea, at this point, we produce 28% of our food. The government will tell you it's 60%. If you go and look on DEFRA's website, it will tell you we produce 60% of our food. Well, that's because they haven't updated it for nearly 4 years. And if you go and do the searches and all the research about what's coming into the country now, all the imports are going up. Now, the great thing about imports is you just go, not having it anymore. I speak to farmers all around the world, and every farmer worldwide is up against the same challenges. They're delivered slightly differently in country to country. Has anyone been following about the ostriches which are in Canada? Yeah, these ostriches, they're desperately trying to kill their ostriches on this ostrich farm because they've got allegedly bird flu. I'll tell you about some more alleged diseases and my fear for this winter. Bird flu, blue tongue and TB, like it, don't care. They're all bloody nonsense. They're all absolute bloody nonsense. Now, I'm not saying they don't exist. They all exist. Are they going to kill all the animals? A friend of mine keeps 100,000 chickens in one chicken house. He lost 2 birds. They culled the whole lot. Not the fact that 99,998 of them lived. They culled the whole lot to stop a pandemic. What pandemic? Now, my thought is this winter, they will try and drop the food supply chain. And they're going to really have a hammer on this winter of the food, and especially meat and dairy. And that will involve an outbreak of blue tongue. We've already got blue tongue restrictions in place across the country, haven't we? So you can't move your cattle and so forth without going across certain borders. Now, if your abattoir, for instance, here's a classic example. If your abattoir is in a different border and you've got to cross that border with your animals, £70 per animal to get them tested. How much profit's in a sheep? About 80 quid this year, isn't it? So you're going to spend £70 of it just to get it tested to send it to an abattoir. More farmers need to be culling on farms. We need DEFRA to agree, in my opinion, to let farmers cull their own animals. Now, you can if you're doing it for yourself, but you can't if you're going to sell it. So why will they not allow mobile abattoirs? Because that would be the easiest way around it, but they won't allow mobile abattoirs. They keep talking about it, they talk about it, but never seem to pass the licence for it. Now, from my side, one of the things what needs to happen from the government side, from DEFRA especially, is the fact that all of the money that's available to DEFRA should be being spent at present on the farmers that want to transition from chemical farming to chemical-free farming. And for those farmers who want to get out of arable and to put animals back on the land. So if you've got a mixed farm and you graze your cattle and you turn that field in next year to put grain in it, you don't need as much nitrogen. Now, there's lots and lots of options out there for farmers to put nitrogen in the ground without using Nitram. And when Nitram was £100 a bag, nobody really cared. Now it's got to, what is it now, about £700 or £800 a bag? It's come down a little bit. But it's now a fortune against where it was. So farmers are then going, shit, what do I do instead? Well, those things called cows are really good at mucking up a field. Literally mucking up a field. So the options are out there for farmers. But unfortunately, we've got to go back nearly 100 years to look at how we used to do things. If you look at growing beans, for instance, if you can grow beans on a field, broad beans, something like field beans that are really good nitrogen fixers, to put the nitrogen back in the ground so you don't use natural, so you don't then have to use pharmaceutical chemicals, has got to be a good way forward. So we've all got to come together. Customers need to start telling their farmers what they want. And one of the things I would ask the public, has anyone ever written to your local MP? Christ, you're the first audience what's never written to an MP. Well, I always ask the question, has anyone, and people put their hands up and say, did you get a response you wanted? Because no one does.
Yeah, they always want to say rubbish, but they don't like the rubbish.
It's just copy-paste, right? Write to your local farmer. Go see your local farmer, you know. People around here, come see them. Talk to them. Tell them what you want to see in the shop. You know, if there's something you want the farmer to produce, and what I will say about farmers, they are the most resilient people in the world. And from my experience of running my farm, and I'm sure there's nothing different here, I can be the midwife at 6 o'clock in the morning. By 9 o'clock, I can be the plumber. By 10 o'clock, I'm a nutritionist. By 11 o'clock, you know, through the course of the day, I might swap about 50 hats. We have to do everything. We can't think about everything. So when we are getting to a point where we're starting to produce lots of different stuff and wanting to get more people to the farm to buy more stuff, we need the suggestions from you guys to say, oh, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? For me, first thing I would put on this farm is loads of chickens and ducks. Loads of them. Get good quality meat and you get loads of eggs. No brainer. Wouldn't be selling, we've had the conversation today, I wouldn't sell any milk to Arla. I'd tell them to back right off and sell all the milk, raw milk. And I think that Ollie and I have had a conversation today about starting to try and send some of this further afield, because I know someone who's looking to get raw milk further afield, and to get that sorted out. Because through things like PMAs and different organisations now, you can start to look at how you can get round the law, the legalities of things. If a farmer cannot sell raw milk off the farm, unless they sell it themselves, they can't sell it to someone else who's going to sell it to a third party. You can, you just got to know how to do it. So there's lots of options out there for farmers, but most of them are absolutely deflated. Yet co-ops are a great way to do it. There's so many good ways at the moment. Since we've travelled the country, and we've obviously been Land's End to John O'Groats and Wales to East Anglia, we've come to realise that lots of people are looking at different options. And the more and more options there is, some farms are setting up buying groups so that their customers are part of the buying group. And if they're part of the buying group, then if they buy a pig in from another farm, it belongs to the buying group, not the farm. So you can all benefit if that's killed on the farm because it belongs to the public. It doesn't belong to the farmer. You could do that, yes. You could do that with fields. You could do it with anything. And that's what a lot of places are starting to look at. They're starting to look at how we do things differently. And that's, if we're going to get around this nonsense long term, we can't keep playing by the government's rules, because they are only out to destroy all the farmers. They want us to eat nothing but processed food in factories. Gloria, you were watching a video the other day, weren't you? She said to me, have you seen this? So they can make margarine in a factory with only things what they can produce in a factory. There was nothing in it at all from a farmer. Nothing, no food in it at all. Plastic, that's it. It's all petro produced. Yeah, I think it's one looking from diesel in it or something. So if I can offer any advice, I would say two things. One, start finding out how you can support the guys if you're this area, and what else they can put on the farm to fill your requirements. And the second thing would be, if you haven't already started stocking up with food, I would suggest you do so, because this winter will be a very difficult time, in my opinion, to get food. And as I say, people can leave or take or leave. I don't really care. I'm just the messenger. But all the research, if you go and look at it, you'll be terrified at the research. If you go and do any research at all into what's going on. For those who don't know about 2030 Agenda, check it out. 2030 Agenda is scary. It's put in place by the World Economic Forum, and they are all crackpots. All right, imagine. And who's the chairman who's just been put in charge? Is the guy who was in charge of Nestle, who turned around and said that we have no right to water as members of the public. Right, it's very
I'm just giving him out.
cool. I've done loads with these guys. Darren's brilliant. We've done loads with Darren. Absolutely. Everyone should be reading that rather than the shite what they put out in the mainstream media. So, guys, thank you all for coming. I'm going to be here until tomorrow. So if anyone's got any questions, ask away. What I can say is, whilst there is a lot of doom and gloom, and I do say this, while there is a lot of doom and gloom around the food industry as a whole, we have travelled the country and we have seen some amazing projects that are in play. And I mean real amazing projects, from the smallest community farms what are setting up 1-2 acres, to big community projects. Has anyone heard of My Little Farm? So the guys from My Little Farm, Keeble and Billy from Wild Minds, and then they're now setting up My Little Village, which is a 1,000-acre farm. There's more and more of these projects setting up across the country. We've travelled through Scotland. We've been given access to land all over the country to set up community projects. And I mean all over the country. Farmers saying, well, I've got 5 acres, 10 acres, 50 acres, 200 acres, whatever it needs to be, to get the public back on the land producing food. So the farmers are wanting to fight back, but they're not going to do it on their own. And if you want good quality food, there is no way better to get it than direct from farmer. And what I would also say is, if you find farmers that want to work with you in regards to, you know, growing veg, let's say, as a simple thing, then talk to your farmers. You know, this ain't going to change because people say to me, don't worry, the people in the white hats are going to come and sort all this out. Let me tell you what I think. And this is genuine, in my opinion. No one's coming to rescue us. This is down to us. And for most of us, we're all of a similar age. And when I started this tour, my concern was not for me. I'm 57. I've lived in a country where I have been blessed to always have food, water, and shelter. I ain't doing this for me, but I have got kids and I have got grandkids, and that terrifies me, which is why I wanted to do the tour, because I thought, well, if I can get through to a few people, you know, we've spoken in front of 20,000 people. Most of those are quite awake, and most of those have gone, Christ, didn't realise it was that bad. But then when we go back and see people, now we're 7 months in, and we've, you know, we was in Hereford yesterday, and some of the people come up to speak with us who we'd seen 6 months ago, and they're going, oh, we're now working on this community project, we're now getting involved in this, our farmers doing this, they're now starting raw milk. There's loads and loads of great stuff going on. So whilst it's easy to get lost in the doom and gloom, I would say don't. Know it's going on. Be prepared for what's going on. But most of all, move forward and get your own systems in place. Because if no one's going to come and rescue us and it's down to us, it's really easy just to go, start on that next week. My mum's always saying to me, darling, you're completely mad. However, what I have noticed is when I go to my mum's now, the little cupboard under the stairs, what used to have the salt in for the salt machine, is now stacked full of food. I went, I'm going to say my bedroom in my mum's house, but went to my bedroom in my mum's house, and I went to put something in the cupboard because we were going away for another 8 weeks, and I was like, stacked up with tins. Even the people what weren't awake are starting to wake up. And and what I love about the nonsense what's going on in the world at the minute, there's so much nonsense going on, whether you look at education being incorrect, health being incorrect, the food being incorrect, whatever it might be. All these different things are waking up people in different ways. Classic. My dad says to me in front of my mum, of course you do realise, don't you, they could have cured cancer years ago. And I said, well, yeah, I know that, Dad. And my mum says, don't be so bloody silly. Yet an aeroplane flies over and leaves a chemtrail, and my mum says, I can't believe they're doing that. And my dad says, you're mad. They're all on different journeys. They're all at different points in it, as we all are. But what I love about it is people are starting to wake up to different things. And it doesn't take that long once you start to wake up to put the dots together. And then you do realise, you know, if farmers have got that stuff coming down from above and you've got a massive amount of aluminium on your ground, that, if you graze grass, can only end up in your animals. However, and I spoke to a guy called Hans Gunton, and Hans, in my opinion, is God when it comes to soil. And I said to him, how does this stand about this? And he said, well, the good news is if you've got really good fertile soil with lots of mycelium and bacteria in it, it can eat the aluminium, and it can take it and change it into a format that the plant can use. Now, I didn't know that. So while we can all go, oh my God, you know, the sky's going to collapse in on us, the farmers that are on this journey already starting to get their soil better, people who graze especially, are particularly good because they've got the cow slurry and that already on the fields. So their fields are already churning that through. But if you get a lot of a classic, we was down in Truro and we got invited to this beautiful clean farm, and you could eat off the dairy floor, I kid you not. You could have it off the cowshed floor anywhere you wanted. It was brilliant, beautiful. And the farmer said to me, I said, we've got this novel concept. He says, this is how it works. So, rule of thumb with cows, eat a third of the grass, shit on a third of the grass, and roll on a third of the grass. So what do they get to eat? A third of the grass. So they come up, I'll put this in place with them. They've got this revolutionary idea where they cut all the grass and take it to the sheds and feed it to the cows. So now we get 100% of the grass, but the cows never go outside. They still class that as grass-fed.
Oh, wow.
If you go in Waitrose, their beef still says grass-fed. It's not a lie. Might be a misinterpretation of the truth, but it's not a lie. So, make your decisions as you roll forward in the forthcoming weeks. Start to look at what you've got at home. Start to look at where you're going to buy your food from. You know, these guys have got a cracking little shop here. Very impressed. And I'm sure, they've all disappeared, but I'm sure that, I think they've gone to milk the cows, but Ollie and them would be only too delighted to listen to what you've got to say about what you'd like to see in the shop. So, any questions? Christ, you're all well behaved.
Here's a paper which this issue of the Light, which deals with the Hunger Games. Let's not make any mistake about it. The government fully intend to starve us. That's a weapon. The government is our enemy, not our friend. And this issue of the paper, unfortunately, is a bit damaged. Anybody who wants it can have it. The Hunger Games, government determined to reduce farmland. What are they putting on it? They're putting
solar.
They're putting these solar panels on it. You might have noticed north of Winchester along Andover Road, about how many square miles? What, 4 or 5 square miles are now covered with, not with, they were grain producing fields until very recently. They're now covered with these.
We've seen some horrendous. We got in when we were in. We was in Lincolnshire, 7,000 acres. Derbyshire, 12,000 acres and 10,000 acres. Lancashire, 15,000 acres. We got invited down months back down in Kent to go and see a new solar farm they were looking at. And we saw the guys yesterday in Herefordshire. So how are you getting on with it? They've now got 27 sites instead of the 3 they said they were going to do 6 months ago. They've now got battery storage going in, which takes up an entire field. It's nonsense. You know, I just twigged on your badge there.
Yeah.
Anyone at the green agenda, and everyone says, oh, you know, we've got to save the planet. Fuck now. Listen, let me tell you something really clear. When we're all dead and buried, the planet's going to be fine. Right? We are the carbon they want to get rid of, without any doubt at all. And if you look at, I've got to ask this question, right? When I went to school, carbon dioxide was the gas of life. How on earth did we get to the point that we allowed our kids to be told that's dangerous? How can we possibly believe carbon dioxide is dangerous? Go on, chuck it about.
That's units.
So, and now they're producing factories to take the carbon out of the air. I mean, you can't believe it. So there has to be a fight back, guys, and the fight back's got to start with us. And it's got to start with us stopping to support supermarkets, starting to support the farmers. And every time you get the opportunity to call someone out on bullshit, call them out on it. Because the reason we're here is because we haven't called them out on it for the last 20 years. The woke agenda has destroyed Western civilization, or is trying to, and that is a real dangerous thing. Any other questions? God, you lot are really well behaved, young lady.
Co-ops just now. Obviously, co-op
When it first started. Yeah. Yeah.
Where are we with that? Co-ops, legislation.
No. No. They're done. They're all bought and paid for. You know, you've only got to look at any of the big organisations. If you look at Classic, National Farmers Union, for those who know what the World Economic Forum is, they have this beautiful little badge, which is like all the colours of a rainbow. And the woman who was in charge of the NFU, bear in mind that stands for no fecking use, right? That's what it actually stands for. She always, every time she ever went out, she always wore her badge for the WEF. Well, and it doesn't matter what governmental leader you see around the Western civilization, they're all bought and paid for. The whole lot of them, they're all bought and paid for. And this is a problem. We was with Andrew Bridgen yesterday, and for those who know who Andrew is, Andrew's brilliant, right? And he laid it straight on the line about a lot of politicians and what they've been up to. And the problem we've got is they've all got away with too much for too long. All the big companies, no one's challenged them over anything. You know, Arla, when Arla put the Bovia scare out last year, it was nothing to do with Bovia. It was nothing to do with the fact of what they were going to put in the milk. That was neither here nor there. What it was about was convincing people they don't want to drink dairy. That's all it was done for. And people think differently. They're naive, honestly, because everyone was like on the bandwagon of, oh my God. And it's like within 48 hours, I said to a couple of friends of mine, I said, you know why they've done this, didn't you? And they were like, yep. Bang on the money. What happened? After a few weeks of them getting absolutely slaughtered. Now, bear in mind, they do not care if you buy milk or not. Arla don't care if you buy milk because they'll sell you oat milk, almond milk, all the other shite milks, what they've produced and convinced people are healthy. I'll tell you what's healthy. Raw milk. That's the reality of it. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to drink my raw milk, and you can come and ask me any questions if you don't feel brave enough to ask in a big environment. You might come and see you on your own.
Talked about this year, controlling food and starving us all out slowly over the next 5 years of this. No matter what our supplies are. What's your thoughts on them taking over ports at the moment?
Okay, I'll tell you what I think's going to happen, and I'm on the Farmers to Action, which are one of the only groups which has really taken any action. They're in Liverpool today. They've gone to the Labour conference with their trailers of truth. So they've been travelling all around the country with these trailers with big banners on. They've got people to sign it to say their thoughts on the government and what's going on with farming. And as a result of that, they've gone there today. Now, I don't think that's going to make one piss worth of difference, right? But what it will do, a bit like the petitions, it will wind people up when the government doesn't do something about it. And I think what will happen next is that you're going to see the food barricaded at the ports. That's coming. I know that's coming from what conversations have been had on there. I think you're going to see the supermarket distribution centres blocked again, like they did last year with Waitrose. I think it was Waitrose. They caught, no, Morrison's. I think they caught out real quick. Bear in mind that if you look at any of the main distribution depots around the country, you only want one tractor with a load of bales on to block it, and they had it. You know, and you think, what have they got? I think there's 5 distribution centres across the UK for all of the main supermarkets. It doesn't take nothing to pull the food supply down.
Have you heard about Stratos? You don't think they're going to pull another thing like that? Which will stop it again?
I think yes is the answer. I think we're going to have a massive amount of nonsense in the next few months. And as we have more uncertainty from the government, there'll be more uncertainty from the WEF on what's coming next. You know, let's face it, in 2020, we all got locked down and told to put masks on and save granny by banging the saucepan and all the other nonsense what went on. And yeah, I know lots of people bought it at the time. Would you buy it next time? No. But I'll tell you what's coming. They will find another way to lock us down.
Yes.
Whether that's a climate problem, whether that's a food problem. You know, bear in mind, if they want to change over to digital currency and digital ID, the minute they get that, we've had it. But what I was going to say is, right, once we are at the point of that coming, the challenge is, where do we go from there? We can't. There's nowhere to go. But if we can head that off now, which I think we can, but what I think we need is a lot of people to go, do you know what? Enough is enough. And at this point, we're not really at that point. 2 million people have signed, and I say, I don't care what your thoughts on petitions are. If you're on social media, share the bloody thing, because the worst thing it's going to do is wake someone up. And I'm not a great lover of petitions, but I stuck it out, and we was at yesterday at Hereford, and that had jumped about 1 million in a day. Well, that sends a very clear message to government, even if they don't want to hear it, because we all know the public's getting to the point, the tipping point's coming. More people are waking up. More people are stepping away from the system for their food supply, for their health supply, and all different things. So as we're progressing forward, that's only going to get worse for the government. What I think could happen is, I hate to say this, because if I'm right, it's going to be terrible, but they could try and send us to war with Russia, and then, or they could have a terrorist attack, and if we have a terrorist attack, we'll have to have digital ID to be able to go anywhere, because that would obviously be good for us, because that would make us very safe. So,
Whatever they do will be a lie. Whatever they
oh
do,
yeah. What you got to understand, if
the lockdown was a lie.
if you take everything they tell you and just go, if they tell you it's black, it's bloody white, and work on that perspective, then you'll be pretty well off.
What you have to understand, though, what people need to understand, is that, as I repeat, the government are our enemy. They're not our friend. They are not respectable people who give a damn about us. No. On the contrary, they want us out of the way. They want to bring the population down. This is objectives which have been formulated within our own civil service. And that's the real government. It's not these politicians who don't make any decisions at all. All politicians do is make announcements. They don't make decisions. That's all made by NGOs, private corporations, which are in partnership with government now, under the new totalitarian technocratic system they plan. And that's where it's coming from. And all these agendas are linked together: food, energy,
Health, education, war. And they want war because war is the great enabler. Once they bring war on the sea, they can exercise dictatorship, as happened in 1939 when Britain became a dictatorship. Does anyone think there's going to be another election? Because I'll tell you what I think will happen. Before we get to 2029, they'll drag us into a war, and then they'll be able to say, oh, well, I'm sorry, at the moment we can't have an election and we'll never have another one. That's what I think is going to happen. So the big thing we've got to fight back against, though, is digital ID. At this point, it's our biggest argument.
Oh, digital ID, something on that. There's going to be the two big demonstrations planned. One for Saturday, October the 18th in London, and the next for the 23rd of October. Look them up online. You should find them advertised.
And we'll get 10 million people turn up, and they'll tell us 100,000 came. Go on, you were going to say. I don't know enough about it. I genuinely don't. Yeah.
So people are going down with Stratos.
Yeah.